Bigger, faster, stronger.
I'd like to call the East Ascension Drainage Meeting of November the 6th, 2017 to order. Ms. Secretary, let it be known that Mr. Kluwat, Mr. Lambert, and Ms. Casso is absent.
Turner.
And Mr. Turner. Mr. Dawson, would you lead us in the invocation followed by the pledge?
Oh, that Dawson.
Get that Dawson. Good Dawson.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for all that you've done, and as we come into the holiday season of Thanksgiving, we ask that you cause our hearts to reflect upon all the things that we're thankful for. We pray for those families that have suffered such loss in the recent tragedies, the one in New York, the one in Texas, and still those who are going through a horrific time to get back on their feet after the recent storms. We thank you for the protection that you continually give to Ascension Parish. We ask for your wisdom and guidance, which you say that you would give unto any man liberally who asks. So we ask for your wisdom in doing the people's business tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anyone wishing to speak on any agenda item, please sign in with the secretary. Move on to number 4, the acceptance of the October 9th.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Lawless, second by Mr. Sadler. No chairman's report. Move on to number 6, Mr. Rue, the drainage report.
Yeah, the only thing I'll need to comment on, I think, is if you notice the capital improvement project schedule, this is what usually the consultants hand out individually to you at every meeting. What I did was made a summary of the projects from the consultants. There's only 2 pages, so it's a lot easier to read. I condensed it. And so if you have any questions on that, get with me at a later date, and I'll be glad to sit down with you and go through the dates and the schedule. But again, hopefully it's a lot easier to read and explain a little bit better. One other thing, on the schedule, I need to add what's been expended to date, and that's going to be at the next meeting. I'll expand the columns to reflect not only the total price, but what's been expended. Okay?
And that's at the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about the last item on our agenda is our major project. So I won't get into too much of that until we get down to the end.
Appreciate it. Any questions from Mr. Rue? If not, we're going.
Got one, Mr. Chairman. Bill, not on major projects, but I had some phone calls the other day with that rain we got with the Garcon Road. I know we were in the process of replacing that box culvert. What's the status on that? And do we have a time frame yet?
Within the next, before the end of the year.
Okay.
We want to get started on it. In fact, we just received the covers. We had it ordered for a little while. We had to make and box cover special order. And so the box covers, I think, are in or able to be delivered. And we have one other project we're doing right now, then we're getting on with the Garcon.
Okay, one of the things we need to be aware of with that is since we put the other ones, we made that improvement to it. It actually raised the level of the road up right there, so it's holding more water on that east side than what it has been before from what the residents are telling me. So we need to be aware. I don't know if we can lower that the next when we replace them, if we can lower that down a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Probably help.
We're looking at that also to even the road out, the approaches, make everything even going across.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? If not, well, Mr. Sadler.
Thank you. Bill, I just need to hear you tell me that you've seen the emails from the gentleman on Highway 73 with the grass cutting issues.
Yes, and what that has to do with is not so much grass cutting, it's manicuring the curbs and the grass that grows up in between the joints and stuff like that. They want it better manicured. We tried to do it a couple of times and just didn't have the personnel to stay on it. What we're trying to do is get another organization to come in, or volunteers to come in and actually maintain that that intersection.
Okay.
In Gonzales, it's not a major problem because the city helps maintain, the intersection I-10 and 30. We really need help from a volunteer group, like
So-
Keep Ascension Beautiful or something like this.
So educate me, that's obviously a state highway, so
Yes.
it's really their responsibility, or is it just one of these areas that they're paying us to do and we?
They're paying us to pass, and that's just, but that, again, what we're talking about there is manicuring the
Right.
intersection, make it prettier. And if time permits, we try to do it, but it's actually getting out there by hand and scraping the joints and the curves and stuff
Well, if you
like
would,
that.
just respond to him, because he's on me.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get a group to participate.
All right.
I ain't been successful yet, but we're still trying.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, with that being said, we'll move on to number 7, general business, authorization to amend contract. Mr. Bill?
Yes, sir. This is between East Ascension Gravity Drainage District and Burke Klein Peter to provide additional engineering scope of work and compensation to Marvin Bro Pump Station, surge protection and stop log project, adding engineering for the debris rake system. And contract for that addition is $54,240. It's critical that we combine this project, the stop log and, the stop log project with the rake system, because basically they got to be done at exactly the same time. It got to be engineered together because they're right in the same place. So it's critical that we add this to their contract so they can engineer all of it at one time.
So move, Mr.
Moved by
Chairman.
Mr. Johnny. Second by Mr. Benny. Any discussion? Any objection? Not, motion passed. Number 8,
Yes, sir. This authorization for local services agreement between the Gravity Drainage District Number 1 and Ascension Parish for the purpose of expediting projects within Ascension Parish. We had a similar agreement, but it wasn't a formal local service agreement in the last few years to help each other out. This is just expanding that to a more legal document.
Bill?
Yeah.
Can, tell me, exactly what you do under this?
Cody, I'm gonna let you
Yeah.
answer that.
I actually have the agreement in front of me. This looks like, this was presented to me for review. This actually deals with the road project that y'all about to undertake. Y'all know more about the details than that than me. But it's basically allowing the Gravity Drainage District, or the Drainage District and the parish, when they come in and do these projects, to share resources. You know, you're doing a road, you're improving the drainage ditch at the same time. And it's provided for in the Louisiana revised statutes that allows you to basically enter into these agreements to share resources and moving forward on these kind of projects.
Does this share cost?
Yeah, share costs, share equipment, you know, everything that goes together, so.
Okay.
Then Mr. Lowell?
So one of the issues that we have going on right now in Henry Road is a very good example of this. Not only are we going to do safety widening, but we also, there are drainage ditches on each side, very deep, very steep. So obviously this work is going to affect drainage. This will allow the Transportation Department and the Drainage Department to work together so we make sure that we're not duplicating any efforts and wasting any money.
You're exactly right,
That's the quick
Councilman.
version.
And you made a good example of how we participate. In the Henry Road, we got a major channel, the Muddy Creek, that goes through it. Part of our project, in fact, we're going to talk about it in the next item or two. We get money, federal money, to come through there and improve that canal, but also improve the crossings. So part of the grant money and part of the money we're spending in improving that drainage will be upgrading the crossing of Henry. So that'll be funded through East Ascension Drainage through the grant. So this is an example of how we work together.
And just to point
Mr.
out,
Bennett.
what the statute says on this is, under local services agreement, this is Louisiana Revised Statute, Title 33-1324. And I'm just pulling out what I think y'all are asking right now, but it says such arrangements may provide for the joint use of funds, facilities, personnel, or property, or any combination thereof necessary to accomplish the purposes of the agreement. And then you get into a whole list of what you can enter into local services agreements for. And drainage improvements and roads are both on the list.
Mr. Johnson?
The only question I got, Bill, is we've had issues in the past where we've had some concerns about commingling of funds. And so what are we going to do to track this to make sure that we can show folks we're spending drainage money on drainage work and road money on road work? How are we going to account for this and be able to demonstrate that?
well, of course, what we're gonna do when we get into a road project like this, as part of planning for the project, we have to look at exactly what money will be spent and where that money is coming from. At that point in time, we're gonna identify drainage funds and why we're using drainage funds, but it's gonna be all accounted for. And it'll be accounted for in documents coming to both you and to the Transportation Committee when you start looking at the expenditures of that project. So it's going to be in the document, detailing the expenditures.
Fantastic. I mean, this is the right way to move. I mean, make sure we're doing things efficiently and saving money where we can. And we've had issues in the past where we've done a road project and then we come back along 6 months later and did a drainage project and had to tear apart a road we just resurfaced. So doing this simultaneously and working together is a very efficient way of doing the business. We just got to make sure we're tracking it so we can show and explain to people what we're doing and how we're doing it. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Mr. Sadler?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Rue. Benny kind of had my question, although he asked it more in general. I would like maybe an explanation specifically, and without looking at the 10 or 12 bullets in Phase 2, one that would be near and dear to my heart would be Louisiana 73 at Bluff, the new connector roadway. So let's say the parish is putting that in, quote, that roadway, and you get into a drainage issue. If I understand what Cody just said about Title 13, 1324, I heard the word Cody funds. Does that mean then that if it's not even a drainage per se direct issue, but we can still take this commission's funds, drainage taxpayer dollars, so to speak, and spend it to improve roads, or am I misunderstanding this totally?
No, we can't. It's got to be associated. It could be associated with a road, but it's got to be primarily for drainage purposes.
So when you're doing that road, if you don't get any drainage issues, then no money can be used from
No,
from
we
East
only
Ascension
use
drainage.
money for drainage issues.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, it's moved by Mr. Lawless.
Second.
Second by Mr. Johnny.
And,
Any opposition?
The revised statute, Title 33, 1325, also requires that this be done in resolution form, the approval of electrical services agreement. So somebody just make a motion to allow Dempsey to sign a resolution.
I make a motion that Dempsey be allowed to sign the
Moved by Mr. Lawless,
resolution.
second by Mr. Johnny. Any opposition to the motion? Pass. Number 9, Mr. Rue.
Yeah, this is approval and acceptance of funding award in the amount of $852,858 for HMGP 1786-005-0003, Phase 2 construction of Muddy Creek improvements, and Northwest Parish President Kenny Metassi to sign any documents pertaining to this grant, and Green LeBlanc provide financial
Second.
documents.
Moved by Mr. Johnny. Second by Benny. Any opposition to this motion? Not. Motion passed.
One comment on this, Martha Collins really worked a lot over the last 3 years, I think, to get this money, and her persistence helped gain this
Thank you, Martha.
grant.
Thank you, Martha.
Appreciate you. All right, number 10.
Okay, approval of administration's recommendation to limit participation in hazard mitigation grant program for repetitive loss properties, which presently includes elevation of homes and the demolition of homes. The recommendation is to include elevation of homes only. What we would like to do is limit our participation to the elevation of homes. The reason for that is several. One being that the demolition of homes is the responsibility of the parish to both contract and to take over the ownership of that property forever after the demolition. If you go with the raising of homes and you try to help the people stay there, you've got a taxpayer remaining on the property. It's a useful piece of property. And when you go for raising, the contract to raise is done by the property owner, so the parish don't have the responsibility of even contracting it. The money basically passes through the parish to the homeowner. So it's a lot easier and it's a lot more beneficial to the parish, again, mainly because you got a valuable piece of property, again, and with the taxpayer living there. So that's why we recommend.
Moved by Mr. Dawson.
No, I got
Oh,
a question.
question? Go ahead, Mr.
Well,
Dawson.
I'll make a motion,
You'll make the motion?
but I have a question too.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mr. Aaron Lawler. Discussion, Mr. Bill.
So, like, for example, Randy's not here, but in that Buxton subdivision, what effect does that have on that?
Now, this it's a different, if you're talking about a whole subdivision or large piece of land where everybody is wishing to be bought out, Silverleaf is a perfect example. If all of the people in that subdivision qualify for it, and all of them are willing to participate, we can go in and buy and participate in the buyout and demolition of the whole area, because what we intend on doing then is making a detention area-wide detention area with that property. So it's of value to us to participate in something like that. But
Well, is this gonna preclude that?
no, this is
Okay.
just for single property owners. We're trying to persuade them to go to raising their home in lieu of demolition. But it doesn't, we're looking at every event or every piece of property, separately. Mainly, if you have a big enough piece of property where the parish can use it as a detention, then it's a benefit to us to participate in the total buyout of the whole place. Because again, now you're using it for a useful purpose, area detention.
So I've heard some low numbers on number of people that qualify for this repetitive loss. Do you have a ballpark idea of that?
You have any idea, Martha?
200 that qualify under the repetitive loss?
All of them want to participate.
Yeah.
So we'll,
And Martha's saying for the purpose of the camera, about 200, right, Martha?
The list comes from FEMA directly to us. The homes are, the properties are listed by claims that they have filed within the FEMA system, National Flood Insurance. They get on that list by filing the claims. If they don't file claims, then they're not eligible for either. They're not eligible for the HMG funds because they're not in the system. So you could have homes that were being flooded, but they never filed a claim against the insurance, and they would not be included in that list.
so we're doing about 200 right now. And the hazard mitigation grant program, is this, I know that the 33 million that we're looking at spending for drainage improvements is a part of that also. Is this the same monies?
The hazard mitigation funds are being dedicated to drainage projects. What we've actually done is gone out for national competitive on the elevations, which allows us to have a homeowner go into a different percent. 75-25 is the hazard mitigation standard. If we go out for the national account, it's possibly 90-10, or it could be up to 100% on that. So the odds are better going for elevation, but we still keep them open if they don't qualify under that one. We still have them in here to fit in wherever funds can be allocated.
So is it correct, there's a different pot of funds than what we're doing our drainage in,
Right
correct?
now, we're doing a national, we feel real good about it. We've got a lot of the information to them. In fact, it's already going to FEMA. So we're open.
Which one is that?
The
drainage?
elevations.
Oh,
The
this one,
elevations.
elevations, okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Martha.
all right.
Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Martha. You might want to stay there, I'm not sure. So, Bill, you said if the homeowner wants the home raised, that's up to them, and you still have the taxpayer involved. I'm wondering, how does that factor in with our most recent council getting in bed with, so to speak, the adjudication company and so forth? I mean, if you're not a repetitive guy, and I got experience with this with my fishing camp at Slidell, the program that Martha's talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, Martha, requires, that's why it's called repetitive, at least 2 times water getting in your house. And even then, you may not ever get into that list for every so many hundred are given to St. Tammany, Ascension, all the different parishes for the SRL, Severe Repetitive Loss Program. So let's say someone had 1 loss, and they're not even eligible, but their home is wrecked, and they don't want to do anything with it. We would be giving up, if we only go with the part of this that deals with raising the home, and let's say the homeowner doesn't want to do that, no one does, I'm telling you personally, because raising your home is a 6-digit task, plus 30, 40 grand probably out your own pocket just for the things that FEMA will not cover. Issues like, you know, I've been through all this, you know, what's pre-existing, what's not, what are we obligated to bring up the code, what are we not obligated to bring up the code and all. I just want to be sure that we're making the wisest decision here possible and saying we want to go one way with them, but we don't want to get involved with the raising part.
You're basically looking, they have to qualify. You know, they have to be a severe repetitive loss and qualify, and they have the option, they can go, in most of the case, they can go for raising their home or they can go for demolition. We're trying to force most of them to choose the raising of their home in lieu of just the easy, a lot of times the easy way of just, okay, just pay me and let me get out of here.
So very few are going to raise their home, in fact, probably none if they only got one loss. In my case, it was
Yeah, but they
Katrina
don't
and
qualify.
Isaac
They
that made mine.
wouldn't qualify.
They
Right.
won't qualify
That's my
for
point.
either
Because they
one.
don't qualify, they're not going to want to raise it after one severe damage.
Well, they can't raise it or demolish it,
Through these funds right here, they are not eligible.
for any of the funds.
Any of the funds here. There's
All right.
not funds in, that are coming from hazard
Federal.
mitigation, federal, that would allow the person with one incident to be able to get.
So you guys are
funding
sticking with your
from-
recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion, and a second on this. Any opposition? None? Pass. Number 11, Mr. Rue.
There's approval of the contract between MWL Architects and East Ascension Gravity Drainage District for architectural services for the sandbagging operation pavilion at DPW. Cost is for their services $21,500. They did the renovations of DPW building, and we feel they did a good job, and we're asking to be able to use them for the design and bidding of provide bid documents for that building.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Sadler, second by Mr. Johnny. Any opposition to the motion? If not, motion passed. Number 12.
Yes, sir, and I sent this to you last week. I had to update it from the last month because we actually got better figures for some of the projects, especially of the $33 million type of projects that we're putting into the program. And I put it on 3 sheets, a little bit more legible from that big sheet that I sent you before. If you add the first 2 sheets and kind of put it on end to end, like this, where you can kind of work across it, you get a better idea of our projects, the costs, and how we hopefully will be expending at least our portion of the expenditures over the next 5 years. The last sheet is our operations budget and forecast, including these projects, and it shows how it affects our fund balance. If you notice, at the end of 2022, our fund balance is down to about $4.5 million. Now, that's assuming that we get absolutely no funds other than the $33 million from any other sources, and we are working to have funds, from other federal funds come in, like Martha was talking a minute ago about the national competition. Some of these projects are in that, and of course, that will offset our expenditures and our forecast once these funds come in. But I did not want to add funds that we did not have at least a good chance of getting, or we don't know for certain right now. So again, this is just a plan. It's some projects that we feel is necessary, you know, for the drainage district, and with some forecasts of expenditures and revenue from operations. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Bill.
Bill, see, I'm looking specifically at Panama Conway, and you've got this dredging number 5 of the Panama, and that's the upper reaches of the Panama. You know, we had looked at that, and we're really concerned about that, and they're causing a problem in the lower reaches. So, you know, I'd like for you to, you know, consider that before we get to spending any money on that, to make sure that what we're doing there doesn't affect the the people that live in the lower reaches of that.
Yeah, again, that Panama Canal Basin dredging is basically the airport to LA 70. That's already been planned and being engineered by GSA.
Well, I don't think it's the right thing.
Well, that's the canal basin dredging is what was recommended by the model, HNTB, and was given over. PLD is paying GSA to do the engineering on it right now.
Yeah, I realize that.
Now,
I mean, we found some problems with the model, and I'm still not
Well,
satisfied that,
we
you know,
don't.
that's gonna have the correct effect.
This is just the plan, and again, we can change it once we get more information in. But one of the things, of course, further down, you're looking at $33 million. That's deals mostly with Conway and a major drainage reservoir expansion in Sorrento.
Yeah, I see that. That's good.
Right, and also a ring levee at Tuyay to protect them and expansion of the pump system. With that project, we're hoping to mitigate a lot of drainage issues along Hodgson Road, Brittany Street, and all that area next to the I guess, west of Sorrento. The Panama, by doing some of that, we're hoping to be able to alleviate some of the problems in Panama itself by taking those, by not having it stack up there and back up more into Panama. We're hoping to, again, mitigate some of the problems in Panama. As of right now, again, the only thing we can work off of is the model that HNTB did, which they specifically recommended. The only good, I guess, project with some type of benefit is LA 70 to airport dredging right now.
Yeah. I'd like to see us not have the money to do these, you know, the bridge crossings at, in Conway, for example, if the railroad needed assistance on the trestle there, and also the Boyce Tower Bridge. So,
That
you know,
trestle-
to do this at the expense of some of those in the lower reaches.
You're gonna have to make a priority decision any way we go on it. We can put the plan together. But again, it's totally up to y'all if y'all want to divert some of the funds on one toward a new project. You know, if you wanted to, or at least hold off on actually going too far with that Panama dredging until we get more definite information in from the railroad company and how, what are their plans to participate with the Boyce Tower Road and also
So are you looking
DOTD.
for some kind of approval on this tonight?
Oh, no, we don't have to.
It's just for
We
information.
don't have to.
Information on.
But again, I like for y'all to understand and at least accept a plan for the next 5 years, or at least an outline of a plan for the next 5 years. So we have projections and someplace to start shooting, you know, moving toward, instead of just not knowing exactly what the next project is gonna be. We want, at least something on hand, on paper, saying this is what we're gonna try to accomplish over the next 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Mr. Aaron,
I'll be very brief.
go ahead.
Oh, okay, I just want to be very brief. I just want to have a chance to speak with you later on about the Bayou Manchac dredging and crossing. I've talked to a couple constituents that are worried on both sides of Bayou and from one end to the other about how this could affect backflow flooding. They want to look into that more. We don't have to do it now. I know we've got a time crunch on us, but if we can set aside some time the next 2 or 3 weeks to
Yes,
talk
sir.
about that.
And if you notice, for the budget and timeline on it is to be determined. We have to work, it's a bigger project, participation from us, East Baton Rouge and Iberville. And that's why we took it off for us actually predicting a amount of money expenditure about on it and also a timeline. So we left it kind of open right now. Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that sort of answered my question again, but since Councilwoman Castle wasn't here, I was going to ask you number 10, the Bayou Manchac dredging and crossing update. And I'm going to go out on a limb, but I guess you've already said it, that because this is a tri-parish venture with Iberville and East Baton Rouge, that's why the shared funding columns of EOD and others are, as it says, to be determined. Without being pushy, though, is there, we're talking, is there any
Yes.
timelines as to when maybe we get I guess it's going to require signed agreements between the three parishes?
It's going to be, and also we are looking toward getting assistance from the Punch and Levy District to act as the sponsor, similar to what they did about 15 years ago,
Right.
and another project associated with that bayou. So we're kind of looking at them to take the lead as being a sponsor because it deals with 3 different parishes. So
Yep.
we are talking, but that's what we're looking at trying to do.
Yep, and before anything's approved, I agree with Councilman Lawler. I'm getting probably some of the same phone calls. I'm sure Terry is as well, where all 3 of our districts are affected by this. A lot of folks, for example, are telling me in the Spanish Lake Basin area itself, that levee that's there should be actually heightened. It's already a walk-on levee and blah, blah. Everybody's a drainage expert, obviously, but
Watch how you say that.
my constituents understand thank you, Dempsey, for the warning when I say these things, but without playing engineer myself either, they give me these calls and I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea or not. A lot of them are against cutting into the road. Other people are all for doing the snagging and the dredging, but others saying that ain't gonna do nothing unless you do like it was when nature had it that way and connect Manchac all the way back to the Mississippi River, and so forth. So I don't know. Let's, if we could be included individually, maybe as the council members involved in that item number 10, before anything's signed off on, I wouldn't mind at least sitting in the room and listening.
That's no problem. Again, that's a hard issue, mainly because it deals with 3 different parishes, and that what happens on Manchac affects the 3 parishes differently. So we just got to work through the differences. That's what caused the failure of a joint program back in 2002 or 3. Because of 1 or 2 parishes are willing to do a certain thing, and then another parish said, no, we're not, and then it kept going back and forth, and it finally died because of that. Hopefully it won't happen this time, but we have to work through the problems.
Mr. Ken Dawson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to kind of point out what Mr. Rue was saying, there has been a letter that has been signed in support of with the 3 parishes, Iberville, East Baton Rouge, and Ascension Parish, to the Pontchartrain Levee District, as this is an important project that we want to gather support from. Also, Congressman Gray's office has contacted the parish because he's looked into it, and I think, Mr. Rue, we have some people coming down tomorrow to even talk about it a little bit. So kind of working together on these drainage issues is something that there is being recognized and gaining support, and also from a congressional point of view as well.
Just a note, I was at the last Pontchartrain Levee District meeting, and their finance committee approved this project, them taking over the permitting, and they passed that along to the board, and the full board approved it. So, but both of those have been approved for them to move forward with the permitting.
Mr. Johnson? Anything on the 5-year capital?
No, the only thing, again, I'll be glad to, if several members wants to get together and form a subcommittee and to sit down and really go through this and iron out some differences and bring it back to the board, it's fine with me. Again, I just want to give you something.
And Bill, you might want to add this, Bill. I mean, this is the closest we've been with East Baton Rouge Parish and Iberville as getting some agreements. O&M, just any kind of work agreement. I think we're real close with this, and it's headed in the right direction. Mr. Johnny?
Bill, just to clarify, you're saying you're asking for approval of this plan, which is kind of like a wish list. This is not a budget. It's not anything we're going to be held to, correct?
With the some of the things already started. The low risk levy extension and stuff like this. However, if you notice number 11 and number 12. Those are 2 things that I need for you to agree on for that to be part of our hazard mitigation grant funding, that $33 million. Part of that, those 2, of that major project is to include those 2 projects because we're applying for funds for those 2 projects. So I do need for you
11 and number 12.
To agree that for us to go forward with the application for funding for those 2 projects. That's number
11 and 12. I'll make that
11 and 12.
motion.
Moved by Mr.
I'll
Dawson,
second it.
Second by Mr. Aaron. Any other discussion on the 5-year capital plan? Anything? If not, motion passed. With that, Mr. Rule, we'll close out.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Sadler,
Thank you.
second by Mr. Johnson. We adjourn.